Hello and welcome to the Voice Vibe podcast. My name is Philippe Hall. I'm your host. Today I have a friend and colleague as my guest speaker and somebody I appreciate and admire very much. His name is Matt Edwards. Matt Edwards, I can read through his bio for you. You should know he's a professor and coordinator of the musical theater voice at Shenandoah Conservatory. He's also the artistic director of the Contemporary Commercial Music Vocal Pedagogy Institute. He's taught a lot of famous singers, and also he's an author and has published many articles. He has a new book coming out soon, so keep your eyes out for that one. I also like to just tell you about my personal experience with Matt. We started doing some collaborations a couple of years ago, and every time we talk, it's like our brains are absolutely connected. It's just refreshing. It's fun. We really share a lot in common about our passion for singing, about our passion for teaching, and are always considering how can we help singers get the results they want faster. So I'm a big fan of everything Matt does, and it's just always a pleasure to have him. And today we're going to be talking about the tongue and how to release tension through improving articulation. So this is a big deal. You know, the tongue is responsible for all the vowel sounds and resonance, so many things, and yet an unskilled tongue might get in your way. Let me welcome with me Matt Edwards. Hi, Matt. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Great. Happy that we're doing this again.
Me too.
This is a great topic, that you suggested. I'm really happy you suggested this. Tongue articulation, the movement. It's just so vital to good singing, and it seems like in the beginning, people just even if you want to really be aware of it, just take some time to develop that internal awareness of what's going on with my tongue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, tell us a little bit about how you even got interested in singing. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. You've worked with lots of universities. You've spoken at all kinds of voice conferences. But did you imagine when you were a young man that you would be doing this today? Was this always your dream, or how did it come about?
Yeah, I don't, my parents say I was always singing when I was a kid. They have a photo of me when I was like 6 years old with one of those little radio things with a microphone, the old Fisher Price toy out in the front of the house singing on it. So I know I was always, singing as a kid. My dad was a factory worker. I didn't grow up surrounded by the arts until I got into high school. And I mean, my family was into music, but it was more like country music and rock music. Bruce Springsteen, the Statler Brothers, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Led Zeppelin, Guns N' Roses. Listening to all that music while I grew up. I wasn't exposed to like fine arts really until high school. And then in high school, we had this program called Muse Machine in Dayton, Ohio, where they would bring in performing artists from the symphony, the ballet, the opera, the theater, and bring them into campus. And then we got like cheap tickets for $10. You could go see, one of these productions at one of the venues. And it was a great way to be exposed to stuff you'd never been exposed to before. And so when I was in high school, I was singing in choir. I was playing guitar. I had a band that I was playing with. And then I started doing musicals as well and doing the plays. And I kind of loved anything that I could do with my voice. And I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to do something performing related. And so when it came time to go to college, again, like, my family didn't really know where to go in the fine and performing arts. And, this is back in just the earliest days of the internet. It wasn't at all like it is today where there's college coaches helping you figure everything out. So I kind of had to figure it out on my own. And it looked like I was going to go be a music theater, music education major at Bowling Green State University. But this was back in the 90s when there was a lot of economic turmoil, and my dad got laid off from his job right when the deposits were due. So that kind of went out the window, didn't have a choice anymore. And my only real option was to go to my hometown university, Wright State University, which had a really great music education program, but it was classically oriented. So I started off at Wright State as a music education major, studying classical voice. It was about the second week of school where the head of the voice program asked me to audition for the opera, and I was like, okay, like that sounds fun. And so I auditioned for the opera, and I got in to it. It was Magic Flute, and they had me sing the speaker role, and then I was the second man in armor and the second priest. And so I got to do a bunch of little bit roles, and I had a really great time. And the next thing you know, I got cast in the Dayton Opera Chorus to do Così with them. And then I started singing with some of the symphonies in town and the chorus, and then I got a couple little solo spots as well. And I started thinking, this is what I want to do. And I had a coach at the time who was a really great lifelong mentor of mine named Mark Jones. And Mark said, well, if you really want to do this opera thing, you need to go to a school that's known for doing opera. And so he helped me transfer to the Cleveland Institute of Music. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew it was the school in Cleveland. And again, pre-internet days, you can't just look things up. And if you don't know, the Cleveland Institute of Music is probably one of the top 5 conservatories in the United States. It's listed as one of the top 20 in the entire world. I had no idea what I got myself into. And but I got there, and there was only, they had a cap on the number of students that were allowed in the program. It's 36. If there was more than 36 people, no one got in. That year, 2 of us got in, 2 of us for the undergrad program. And so once I got there, though, it was all classical all the time. There was no musical theater. There was no rock and roll. And so I really went all in on the opera side of things. But as I started doing that, I still had this love for musical theater and rock music and other kinds of singing styles. And so I kind of pushed that down inside of me because I was going to be an opera singer, and that's what you did. You focused all on opera. So then I performed some outreach programs with Lyric Opera Cleveland, Cincinnati Opera, and then went to do my master's at Louisiana State University, which was a little bit more welcoming of commercial styles. We had a music theater class we could take. And I got into a voice pedagogy class with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. And we both were sitting in this class learning about how the voice works, and we had the opportunity to do our own research. And when I was doing research, I started finding people like Robert Edwin, Lisa Popeil, and Joe Estill, all these other teachers who had already been pioneering these commercial styles and pedagogies for them. And it's kind of intrigued me, and I started thinking, I wonder if there's more to this. And so I started trying to apply my classical technique to singing songs that I had written. It wasn't good. I mean, it was rough enough that even my fiance at that time was like, yeah, I mean, when I played the recording. And that's when we kind of realized we have a problem here. Here I have graduated from one of the top conservatories in the world, and I'm at one of the best master's programs in the country, and yet I can't sing commercial styles anymore. And my musical theater is not the way that musical theater is supposed to be. And so that started me on my journey of voice science and trying to understand what is different, between these different styles. And I got lots of pushback all along the way. I remember I was a teaching assistant, and the person who supervised me, the professor who supervised me, told me he was worried about me at one point after he watched me teach because I didn't do things like anybody else, and I was insisting on coming up with my own approach. And he was really concerned that I'd never find a full-time faculty position, or I wouldn't, be able to be a successful teacher. It worked out. Spoiler alert, it all worked out for the best. And so I just took that. I was like, okay. And I just kept going down the path that I wanted to go down. And along the way, I met lots of different mentors, lots of people that helped me out. And I started kind of piecing things together. And that's what I've been doing now, really, for the last 20 years, is starting to craft new techniques for singers to help them sing any style that they want. And it's to the point now that I don't even sing classically anymore, except for my own, work to keep my voice in shape. And I don't teach anybody classically anymore. I work with classical singers all the time, helping them transition over. But now I'm all in on the commercial styles and musical theater. And I didn't know that I was going to teach. My mom was a teacher before I was born. She went back to teaching after, I went to college. And so it was in my family, the teaching thing. and so I was always surrounded by education. It was in the back of my mind. But what happened is, as I started helping other people just to pay the bills while I was performing, I slowly started realizing that I liked teaching more than I liked performing. And I know right
Mm.
where the big revelation happened was backstage at Ashland Opera Festival. I was doing My Fair Lady, and I was backstage reading acting books and voice pedagogy books. And people were afraid I was going to miss my entrances, because I was more interested in what I was reading and texting my students than I was in being in the show. And that was the big realization where I was like, huh, I guess I'm supposed to teach, because that's more fun at this point. And so when I returned back, we were living in upstate New York at the time. I was singing with an opera company, teaching adjunct to two universities, working in a recording studio, running a black box theater company. And that's when I decided I think I'm going all in on teaching. And so I did the NATS intern program the next year. If you don't know that, it's the National Association of Teachers of Singing. They have a program where they take 12 young voice teachers from around the country, and they put them with 4 master teachers, and then you get mentored for 9 days, and you learn how to become a better teacher. And so I
Cool.
did that as an intern, and it opened my eyes to a whole new world of things. And the next year, I saw there was a job at Shenandoah University that was looking for an opera singer with experience teaching rock and roll and musical theater. And I was like, wow, that's me. And I applied and I got the job. And so I've been here ever since the fall of 2010. I ended up going back to teach as a master teacher for the NATS intern program. According to them, I'm the quickest turnaround ever between somebody being an intern to being a master teacher. So I'm really proud of that. But I credit all that to them, to NATS, for giving me so much support all along the way as I was doing my work. They asked me to write my book. They supported me, as you mentioned, of going and talking at all kinds of NATS chapters. And NATS members have had me to their universities, and I've gotten to do well over 100 workshops at these different organizations because of NATS. And so I'm really thankful to that organization. And when I came here at Shenandoah, the musical theater program was good. It had a really great regional reputation. And now we're on the list of being in the top 10. Some people say top 5. I saw somebody last night who's a casting director that told me, no, you're one of the top schools, period. And I'm actually broadcasting to you from New York City right now, because I got to go see one of my students star in The Outsiders on Broadway last night. So
Yay.
that was a pretty incredible moment to get to watch, how much this program has changed since I've been here. And yeah, it was an exciting moment. But so that's kind of my story and my background. It's been a fun journey. I always tell, though, anybody who's watching who struggles, it had lots of struggles along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing ever really came easy to me. I had to work hard for everything. Everything with my voice was a struggle. And so I think that's part of what makes me a good teacher, is that when somebody comes to me and they're frustrated and they're talking about all of their challenges, I get it. I've been there. At one point when I was in high school, they thought I was tone deaf, because I just had such an uncoordinated voice. I couldn't sing on pitch at all. I was like in the wrong octave. And then I finally figured it out. So I get it. And that's why I think I really enjoy helping others, is because I want to make their journey easier than it was for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, and congratulations. It's quite the journey, and again, I just share your passion. That is, I find the same motivation in teaching, and it's really good to hear that you're sympathetic to people's struggles and journey. And I know I have had to work hard. I don't know why I wanted to do so many different things. Be it I was a musical singer, quite successful over in Europe for a good decade. Then I suddenly decided I wanted to be an opera tenor. I went back and got a master's, went through all that. People thought I was crazy, but and I've sung rock and roll venues for hundreds to 30, 40,000, and pop concerts and a cappella and Manhattan Transfer, all kinds of stuff. I just loved it. I just loved it, and I
Yeah.
wanted to do it. But that took a lot of cross training, and definitely, I mean, every year there were frustrations, difficult things to overcome. So I guess we both are sending out a message that if this is your passion, don't give up. It's going to be
Yep.
hard from time to time. Just keep going. So one of the things that I learned about singing in different styles is the tongue.
Yep.
And I didn't know what I didn't know until it was in the way. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, my tongue is totally in the way. It's like slow, it's awkward, it's not stretching, it hurts to stretch it. What's going on? And still today, working with a lot of singers just on that tongue, that massive muscle inside of our vocal tract. Tell us what you why don't you just share with us what you would like to share with us today about the tongue, how you help singers improve what they're doing by working with their tongue?
Yeah. So I think that, there's lots of reasons that the tongue is difficult for us. The tongue takes up over half of the vocal tract. And so one of the things that we have at Shenandoah that is a real gift to voice teachers is we have a cadaver lab. And so if you don't know what this is where people donate after they are deceased, before they make the decision, before they pass away, sorry, they make the decision to donate their body to science. And once their body is donated to science, it's made available to educational institutions where you can then go in and do dissections to really understand the human body. And it's really meant for medical practitioners, so nurses, physician's assistants, people going in, of obviously doctors. But Shenandoah is probably, I think it's one of the only universities in the United States where the voice pedagogy faculty have access. I have a key card. Like I can just go into the cadaver lab when no one's in there and do, research on where I don't mess with things that are already under place, but they have a time of the year that we can go in there and we can do our own dissections. And so we've been able to really go inside of the vocal tract and explore it and get a great understanding of what is actually in there instead of just these theoretical concepts and images on paper, to actually touch a tongue, to actually touch the vocal tract and know how big it is, how much space that tongue takes up. And it is massive. It's wide, it's thick, and it's long, and it clogs up your vocal tract. And everyone's mouth shape is different. I have a rather skinny, narrow jawline. I had a teacher with a jawline probably about twice as big as mine, and he would tell me things to do with my tongue, and I would do them, and they didn't work. And now I understand in hindsight, it's because my jaw shape is narrower than my tongue. So when I tried to do the things that that teacher was able to do with his tongue with a wide jaw, it just wasn't the same. And so I have to do things differently. So I think that's one of the
Yes.
things you notice when you work with enough of the singers and the cadavers, that you see all of these different body shapes and how that affects how the tongue is positioned inside of that vocal tract. Some people have longer tongues, some people have shorter tongues. Some people are tongue tied. I have a student I'm working with this year who is tongue tied. We went ahead and got this corrective surgery for that, and it was a game changer for her. Her voice is so free now. She's able to do all kinds of things she couldn't do before, both in her more like golden age mix and her contemporary mix and contemporary belt. And so, we have issues like that get in the way. We have people that have TMJ disorders, and TMJ disorders affect the jaw, but when it affects the jaw, it also affects the movement of the tongue.
Yes.
And so that gets in the way. We have a lot of teachers, especially in choirs, that talk about backspace, like feeling a light bulb in the back of your throat or a pear in the back of your throat, golf ball, whatever you want to think about. And what ends up happening a lot of times when a singer tries to go for that imagery is they actually depress their tongue in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And what a lot of people don't realize is the tongue is attached to something called the epiglottis. So the larynx sits here, the epiglottis is here, and when the tongue pulls back, it actually pushes that epiglottis over the opening in the vocal folds, and it
Mm-hmm.
muffles the sound. And I have some images I'll show you here in a few minutes.
Cool.
And so when we try to get some of those ideas of backspace, we actually end up depressing the tongue and blocking the vocal tract. And if we really want space, what we need to do is to get the tongue to move up and forward. That actually opens up the space behind the
Mm-hmm.
back wall and the tongue itself. One of the misconceptions is that you can actually make backspace. And I run into teachers who believe this all the time. They're telling people to open the back to feel things in the back. But if you take them to a cadaver lab and you show them a vocal tract, they can stick their finger in the back wall and they will discover that it's all bone. because directly behind the back wall of the pharynx are the cervical vertebrae. And there is
Yes.
nothing that can move backwards back there. It's locked in tight. You can lift the soft palate and get it out of the way, but most of the time when you think you're creating backspace, you're actually depressing that tongue. So knowing that and having these revelations of how much people are doing that, when they depress the tongue, it tightens up what are called the submandibular muscles, the muscles underneath of your jaw. Those attach to the larynx, to the
Mm-hmm.
hyoid bone. So then your larynx mobility is limited because of the tongue tension. And so as I discovered all these things, I realized we really need to give singers better tools to work with what we are currently calling tongue tension and have for years and years and years.
Yes.
And what I've come to believe is that it's not actually tension, it's a lack of coordination of the tongue. So if you think about it, what ends up happening is somebody tries to sing an E vowel, for instance. And when they go to sing an E vowel, their tongue goes backwards and up, and they get E. And when they get that E sound, they feel like they have tension. And they don't have tension, they just have a tongue that isn't coordinated to go in the direction where we know the E vowel is formed. That direction is in the front half of the mouth,
Mm-hmm.
very similar to where you would pronounce K, like a K. And so if you say key, like the thing you use to open a door, key, you're going to get your tongue in a better position for E. And if we can retrain the tongue to go up into that frontal position, we lose the tension,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because what's now happening is the vocal tract is aligned and coordinated in a way that's actually productive for the vocal quality you're trying to produce. And so your body's no longer fighting you. When you form the E vowel by drawing the tongue back and up, your ear knows that's not an E vowel. So you
Mm-hmm.
start trying to constrict muscles in your instrument to try to squeeze that vocal quality into a bright E. But all you're doing is squeezing, which means all you're doing is
Yes.
creating tension. So the
Oh, this is
tension
so
is the
great.
result. Yeah, the tension is a result of a lack of coordination,
Yes.
not because you actually have tension.
Ah, yes. Yeah. I just get so excited when we're talking because I'm like, yes, this is exactly what's going on in my mind. And I observe the same things and you're so right on. And it's really interesting. So maybe we just for a brief second talk about why people talk about this backspace. Yeah, if your tongue's depressing and it's on that epiglottis or blocking the main resonator, your pharyngeal tube, you're not going to get that vowel clarity, the resonance. It's just not going to work as well. You get the tongue out of the way, suddenly things are working well, and now you have this sensation of backspace, right?
Yes.
So why do people feel the backspace?
So there's some people who think that what we might be feeling is contraction of the styloglossus muscle. So the styloglossus muscle comes back up here to the styloid process, and it attaches in the side to the glossus, the tongue. And when you pull that tongue back, you feel that muscle contracting. And so we
Mm-hmm.
feel something happening right here. Oh, and so there's a hypothesis out there that what we're actually doing is engaging that muscle, and our kinesthetic awareness is misinterpreting that as backspace when it's
Mm-hmm.
actually backward tongue movement. And I think that's in general, as we have a lot of nerve endings in the tongue. And so when we get that oh in the back, we feel like we're making space because we're
Yeah.
contracting muscles in the tongue, so we feel something there,
Yeah.
right?
Doesn't that
And
produce
so,
that? It produces that kind of pseudo operatic sound that a legit opera singer won't consider a healthy opera sound, but you get the internal feeling like you're doing it.
you do. It's that warm, that caramel pen, which might sound really nice and warm to you in your
Yeah.
head, but to an audience member 50 foot away from you in an acoustic hall, a hall made for acoustic singing styles, it just sounds muffled and sometimes connertly, like the
Yep.
sound that works its way in there. Where
Yes.
the real magic happens, when what you mentioned is we open up everything behind the hump of the tongue. So Ken Bozeman is a voice teacher who's done a lot of research into vocal acoustics. And what he says is that we can really kind of divide the vocal tract into two parts, the back room and the front room. The back room is everything behind the hump of the tongue. The front room is everything in front of the hump of the tongue. Changes to the space behind the hump of the tongue are primarily responsible for changes in timbre, right? If our voice is bright or warm. And we can, if play around with that, you can feel it if you put your fingers here on your larynx and you go, wah, 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 you'll feel that your larynx goes up.
Wow, wow,
Well,
wow.
yeah, so when your larynx goes up, you're narrowing the space in the back room, you get a brighter quality. If
Yes.
we sip spaghetti, if we hold our fingers on the side of our larynx and imagine that you're sipping a string of spaghetti and you go, then go ho, ho, ho,
Oh, oh, oh.
you're going to feel that your larynx has dropped. The back room has opened up a little bit. And all of a sudden, as I talk this way, I have a warmer timbre. So those shifts are happening there. Then what Bozeman says is that then the clarity of the vowels is what's happening in front of the hump of the tongue. So if
Mm-hmm.
I want a warmer E vowel, I could do E with round lips, still keeping my tongue fronted. Or if I want a brighter E, then I would spread my lips. E. And going from E is playing with the clarity of that vowel. So then really what you do is you come up with whatever combination that you want of having, more ho, ho, ho or an space in the back room and then the E on the front room. And then you can get a clearer classical sound. E, one that has more of an actually ringing resonance to it. So when different styles require different recipes, so to say, and so there
Mm-hmm.
are singers, if they're looking for a vocal quality to sing Mozart, they're going to want to have some stability in the back room so that their resonance remains the same as the front room articulates the different vowels and consonants. But if you're working with a singer-songwriter, most of the time stability is not on their goal list of goals. They don't want a stable vocal tract to have a stable tone all the time. They want to have a tone quality that responds to their intent as the storyteller in that moment. And so for those singers, we're more working on coordination so that the back room and front room remain agile and adjust automatically to the intent of the performer. So
Yes.
that's where when we start thinking about different styles, we have to address this back room, front room metaphor in different ways. And that's where then we have to train the tongue in different ways.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Just some thoughts for the listeners. So I tell all of my clients, your tongue is the front wall of the pharynx. It's a movable part of the tube. You've got the three sides that they can move a little bit. They can constrict, contract, and shape a little bit. But that tongue, that's the whole movable front wall. Has a massive impact on your singing. And I try and tell them the pharynx, that backspace you're talking about, it's like the cake. And it's the same cake for almost everything you do. But the icing is the style, like that front space, just the finishing
Yeah.
touch. So I'm right on board with that. A lot of people will feel the tension underneath the jaw, underneath there.
Mhm.
And you said there's muscles that are on kind of below the tongue that connect into the hyoid bone. The tongue's right up there. And some people feel tightness further back, like more in the root of the tongue. So I'm right on board with you that I think the tongue can go in so many directions at the same time. It's quite miraculous that a lack of coordination can make it slow and a little bit clumsy. And maybe there's some gripping inside of the tongue. So how are we going to go? What can we do to improve the tongue movement to perceptively release tension and get a better sound?
Yeah. So one of the first things I do is start with these muscles, these submandibular muscles. And so you just get your fingers underneath of your tongue and swallow. And when you swallow, you're going to pay attention to what you feel down there. Most people are going to feel it contracting. When we swallow, what happens is we close our vocal folds. Air pressure builds up beneath the vocal folds. That air pressure starts to lift the larynx. And as the larynx lifts, our tongue retracts. And then the tongue goes back to help guide the bolus, which is what we call the food or any liquid that we have. And it moves it back into the pharynx and down into the esophagus. So there's a real connection here between the tongue and swallowing. So I first get anybody I'm working with to feel that connection of how the tongue functions in swallowing. Then we start trying to just make a vocal utterance without any engagement of that muscle. And this sounds easy, but in all reality, it's very difficult for a lot of singers. So you get your thumb under here. I like to try and ah as my two starting places. I find those two vowels work well for most singers. And so we just start with a simple uh, or ah, right? And so you are going to begin with just speech until you get this muscle free where you feel that you're phonating, so your vocal folds vibrating, sound is coming out, but that tongue is not engaging. And we're just finding any pitch where this will work. Then once you find a pitch where you have freedom in that muscle, and granted, this may take you 2 weeks to play around with, right? In motor skill development, we would say you're in the cognitive stage. That means that you don't even know that this is a thing for you. And when you're in that cognitive stage, it takes a while to figure out how to do the new skill. And a lot of times you need a lot of outside guidance. So that's where the most frustration usually sets in when you're
Hmm.
working on something in any skill acquisition. And so it can be frustrating. So do it in 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Just do it throughout your day. Eventually, you want to get to the spot where you can sustain a pitch, where this muscle stays completely free. We're not
Uh,
worried about tone quality, right? So that, yeah,
yes.
what you just did is great, right? You just go for it.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, so that's free.
uh,
Now,
yeah, it's very
I remind
interesting.
anybody, yeah, and so I remind everybody I'm working with that sounding good in this phase is not the goal. We sound good when we're communicating something with our voice and our voice responds accordingly. When you've got your thumbs tucked under your tongue going, that's communicating nothing. That's a
Yeah.
functional exercise,
Yeah, and I love you
right?
said you just told people this can take a couple weeks because a lot of people get very frustrated because it's these little steps. So I've adopted the same. I say now it's simple, but it's not easy. So I find
Yeah.
a lot of my exercises, the training, just like this, it's simple. You just hold on to your chin, put your thumbs under there, and make sure nothing tightens up. Pretty simple. Now doing it is not easy, so
I love
it's
that.
gonna take some time because that's where singers freak out. They're like, "You make that look so easy." I'm like, it is simple, but it's not easy to do it extremely well. You have to take time and say, just practice, just like you said. Here 5 minutes, there 5 minutes throughout your day, and give yourself a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden, bam, you're gonna have this acceleration in your singing, which is fun, right?
Yeah, it is. I love that. The simple, not easy is very true, very accurate. So, then we go through trying to get this muscle disengaged. Once we can get it disengaged on a single pitch, then we start to do glides. So finding when glides are easy, we go to stepwise motion. Taking
Oh,
whatever bright, warm, doesn't matter. We just want the tongue out of the way.
that is so
And so
cool.
we,
It reminds me of doing it reminds me of some of my master teachers. They just open their mouth and they do these amazing they'd switch between all kinds of vowels and nothing would perceivingly move except that tongue. And I would watch
yeah,
them go, "What are you doing? And how do you do that?" And now I see myself doing the same thing. Open your mouth, leave everything there. Let's isolate the vocal folds. And it is just really quite amazing. I'm going to work with that personally, so everybody listening should really try and work with this. So first of all, you said just make a sound, any sound, get it free, then maybe shift to some different vowels, and then start
yep.
doing some glides. That's like phase one, phase two, phase three, and phase four. Now we're doing some scales and getting more complex through the range or putting it on the melody of the song. Are did I get those steps down?
Yeah, no, I agree. So it's starting there, right? So then there's the next step, which is improving the movement of the tongue itself. So first we try to break away that motor connection in your brain where your body thinks it has to contract the tongue when phonating. So we need to break
Mm-hmm.
that apart and teach your body that no, that muscle stays free when we phonate. Once it's free, we then have to teach the tongue how to move. So the first step of this next part of the process is doing home alone face. So home alone face is where you put your hands on the side of your face like Kevin when he looks in the mirror, and you put your hands there and you gently drop your jaw. Uh-huh. And then you're going to use the tip of your tongue, the blade of your tongue, right behind your upper teeth to articulate la, L-A. So la, 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 la. Very simple, but not easy. All right.
Love it.
So,
Yeah,
and
keep
what I
going.
notice, I teach this to people all the time, and I watch as their tongue does not go up behind their upper teeth.
Ah, yes,
It
fascinating,
just,
isn't it?
yeah, it flips up in the air, but it never touches behind the upper teeth. And then you watch it move up and to the left, then it comes down and it moves up and to the right, then it moves up and back, and it does everything except what you want it to do. And that's an important discovery to have because that's indicating that you have a lack of coordination in the blade of your tongue. So all of those dentalized and labial consonants that require your tongue, your lips, and your teeth are going to be difficult for you if you cannot get that tongue to just flick out
Yeah.
the consonant,
I was just saying,
right?
like, there were those for the people that might not know, we were just talking about a D, a T, an L. Maybe anytime you say vla or blah,
Yep.
combination of lips and tongue movement up in the front there.
Yep. And so what happens is if your tongue doesn't kind of go where it's supposed to for the consonant, then when it's supposed to go to the vowel, you're already stuck
Yes.
because the tongue was not moving really well on the way to the consonant. So then when it shifts to the vowel, it's a problem. So we start with la, same process, single pitch. Then we start trying to do like a 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I always start with a single pitch, then expand it a little bit, then expand it a little bit more. After they've mastered how to get the blade of the tongue, the tip of the tongue to move, we then work on getting the body of the tongue to move. So to do that, we're going to use a G. And we're going to go back to the same home alone face, hands on the side of your face. And then tongue is going to come up to form a G on the hard palate. So that's where you've got a bony part of your mouth, that's the hard palate. And if you run your tongue backwards, you feel where it gets soft, that's the soft palate. We can do gaw, gaw on the soft
Go,
palate,
go,
but for this exercise, we want it up in front. It's going to
go,
make a
go.
brighter quality. Ga, ga, ga. We want
Ga,
more of
ga,
that for this
ga.
exercise.
Ga,
Yeah, like
ga,
that.
ga. Really interesting because I can feel the difference of the stretch. I'm a freaky singer that knows feels his tongue, right? But
Yeah,
the back, but the it's a definitely a different place because if you go to that back dopey, go go go, you're depressing your tongue, aren't you? It's getting way back
yeah,
and getting in the way, and that's not going to be an articulation maybe we want because we got to get that tongue's got to go to the vowel position after that. It's pretty far away. So
yeah,
I like that you said just think of getting it to touch the hard palate instead of like the uvula.
yeah. And so then you're just going to do your ga, 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 and move that. When you've coordinated the la by itself and the ga by itself, you're now going to put the two together. And we're going to get ga, la, ga, la, ga, la, ga, la, ga, which is teaching your tongue how to move up and forward, because this is the movement that actually exists in most singing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, we start on a singular pitch, move to that 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, then move to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, getting the tongue to bounce around,
You know
right?
what? I'm just going to say this. It's a confession. When people used to say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I had no idea. I pretended to know what they meant, but it's just basically you're at the keyboard. They're just the notes. Like whatever note you start on, that's your first note, and going up and down 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with your fingers on the keyboard. Just in case there was anybody that was really smart out there and like me that was didn't know what that meant, Now you know.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's just this, it's a scale. It's
Yeah.
the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we keep that distance between pitches when we move up a pitch. And so it's just a structured way to exercise your voice. I think about a lot of voice training as having a lot in common with physical training. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you go to the gym, you work 5 pounds first, then you go up to 10 pounds, then you go up to 15, then you go up to 20, then 25, etc. So when we're doing these pitch exercises and moving throughout the pitch range, it's just kind of like we're adding a little bit more challenge to it when we go up in pitch, a little bit more of a challenge, especially for somebody who's working on their upper range.
Yeah.
So we get the ga, we get the la going. Then we start doing more complex things. So one of my favorites is from one of my mentors, teachers, Kay Griffel. She used huckleberry, struckleberry, po. So huckleberry, struckleberry, po. And, and it starts slow.
Huckleberry, struckleberry, poe.
That's right. Then you speed it up. You get huckleberry, struckleberry, po.
Huckleberry, struckleberry, poe.
Then we do really quick pitches eventually. So, huckleberry, struckleberry, po. Huckleberry,
Huckleberry,
struckleberry,
struckleberry,
po.
poe. Huckleberry,
Yep.
struckleberry, poe. Yeah, that stra is a little bit. That's where my movement wanted to slow down. Huckleberry, stra. Huckleberry,
Uh-huh.
struckleberry, poe.
Yeah. And everybody has a different part of it that ends up challenging them.
Yeah.
And we feel it different days. I mean, if you feel just groggy and dragging, you may be like, well, that normally feels fine, but you realize like your whole body's fatigued and your tongue just doesn't want to move, like the rest of your body doesn't want to move
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
am totally loving this. We're going to have to wrap up the live stream because we're going to jump into a private Zoom call. So if you'd like to continue talking with us on a private Zoom call, maybe ask Matt some questions, get some feedback from Matt and myself on your singing, on your tongue articulation, go to the link in the description of this live stream, and you'll be able to access the Vibe private community and then join a private Zoom call. So I'd like to invite you all to do that. I'm going to ask Matt a question in our next meeting because I'm noticing a question specifically about this partnership between the jaw and the tongue,
Yeah.
and taking that now where we've talked about how to get the articulation. That these are great exercises. People really do them. It will completely transform your singing, and they're very simple but not easy. So be concentrated during your practice, execute cleanly, give yourself some time. So we're going to jump over to that next call. I want to thank you, Matt. This was so much fun. Great tips. Thanks so much
You're
for
very
being part
welcome.
of the Voice Vibe.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I always love to talk about this. And, if you have questions or want to find more details, I do some of this stuff on TikTok. You can find me on TikTok, but I go through some of these exercises as well because I like to share this content to help other singers. So it's
Yeah.
just Edwards_voice. You can find me doing these over there. And then if you have specific questions, I try to reply as I can and answer and give people help because I know that it's one thing to hear it on a podcast. It's another to take it back to the practice room and actually do it. But
Yes, absolutely. You do have a great TikTok channel. I like your content's awesome. I'm like, Matt's killing it over there, doing such a great job. So definitely check that out. Give Matt a follow, and his tips are worth gold, people. So thanks again, Matt. We'll get
you're
on that
welcome.
private call and continue this discussion. All right, everybody, tune in next week on the Voice Vibe. Have a great day.